am Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and I'm so excited today to be talking about the fantastic final season of Never Have I Ever. We are joined today by actors Poorna Jagannathan and Richa Moorjani. And Poorna, starting with you, I love one of the choices that you made early on in playing Nalini in terms of choosing to deliver the dialogue at a faster pace, because she's always so decisive in terms of everything that she says, and she knows exactly what she thinks with such conviction. And I was really interested in the journey that led you to that specific choice early on when you first got the role.
Did we speak to you last season, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Such a great interview.
Yeah, it was a great interview.
Thank you.
I mean, it for me, you know, I had never done comedy before, and there was something I kind of learned about comedy while on the job, which is like you just have to get through it really fast, like, you know, fast or whatever. So that it was very much based on that. And I have to say, I have a teenager in real life, and I am speechless most of the time. Like I can't even find the words. I'm so much in shock, right? So the fact that Nalini actually can express emotion and has words attached to his emotion is just like shows how with it she is, and how like it's like, you know, she's very direct and she has boundaries, and you cross those boundaries and she'll let you know, and you know it's a character who's strict and stoic and know where she come from and knows what's right and wrong, and it's the choice of just being so facile with the words for me was indicative of just her brain and how she worked and her values.
I love that. And Richa, with Kamala, you've taken her on such a beautiful journey in terms of she is someone who always wants to be a people pleaser, but so much of the show has been her really finding a lot more of her own voice and putting her own happiness first and foremost.
Yes.
And so given that at the beginning it was more about putting other people in front of her own wants and needs, and a lot more was happening underneath the surface, how have you kind of worked over the few seasons of the show to like bring a lot more of the internal struggle and internal dialogue of the character to the surface?
Yeah,
that's a question, right?
That's a really, really great question. You know, I think that this internal struggle that she's going through and learning to put herself first and to let go of the pressure and the expectations to always be perfect in so many ways and please everybody is something that so many of us can relate to, myself included. And I think that what's so exciting about her journey is just to see how much she's grown since season one, because a lot of I think in the past, first of all, we've never had a character like her before in mainstream television, but anytime we've had any semblance of a character like her, they haven't ever had such a giant arc like she has, and they've kind of stayed the same, you know, throughout every season that they were ever on. And I think just to see how dimensional she is and how much she's grown, and the relationship between her and then the family and her and Davy is just, it's so beautiful and it's so real.
It is, and Poorna, in a very different way, it feels like there's always so much under the surface for you, but instead it being very much because she's coming from a place of trying to hold everything together for everyone around her, and she's always juggling a million balls at any one moment. And so what has been some of the challenges that come with kind of always giving these windows and insights into what she's thinking and how she's feeling and everything that is bubbling under the surface, because kind of that idea of a duck that's gliding by, but the legs underneath are doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember like our first table read, we were reading episodes 1 and 2, season 1. And in season 2, I mean, it was really funny. Episode 1 was really funny, but in season 2, Nalini has a miscarriage, and it's so subtle, right? But there's something about the writing that has space for so much comedy, but so much nuance and grief as well. It's a teen show, but there's such adult themes that
So true.
that are allowed to meander through. It's part of the reason why so many people find themselves on in the show, watching the show.
People of all ages.
Of all ages. So that duck, you know, the duck legs is actually just the writing. It's the engine of what's happening in the writer's room, which is the commitment to make what is usually a very stereotypical character, a commitment to make it three-dimensional, a commitment to portray someone's struggle to raise a child, but also the internal struggle. And I feel like the writers do that for every character.
For every character, yeah.
And so it becomes a very as an actor, it becomes it's one of the biggest joyrides of my life, really.
And Richa, with you, kind of going back to that idea of there's such charisma and exuberance in Kamala, but she's also not afraid to kind of be acerbic when it's necessary, and particularly when it's in protection of her family. And I love the protectiveness that we see coming forth this season when she doesn't trust one of her family members' new boyfriend by any means.
Yes.
And I was interested in just kind of finding that balance of those two different sides, because, they're often both at play in scenes together at the same time, because her family are in the room, but then she's got these suspicions on the side that she's leaning into as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it was really fun to play that side of her, because it's the first time we've seen that side. The first 3 seasons, really, she's desperately seeking validation and approval from everyone around her, whether that's at work or in her family. And in season 4, she's kind of let go of that, and now it's more about validating herself and giving herself the permission to say, because I think the family's already kind of given her that permission. I think everyone around her has kind of already said, yes, you should love who you want to love, and you should put your career first. But she hasn't given herself that permission yet. And I think that it was so fun to play that assertive side of her with the whole grandma situation and that protectiveness. And that's something that I really relate to, too, because I think the most assertive I am is when it comes to my family. And I think that's how Kamala is.
And also, again, as Rich is talking, it just occurs to me that every woman in that household serves as a role model for the other one, right?
That's true.
We all learn rage and how to be brave from Devi, and independence and ambition, putting your foot down. Like Bhati, it's just everyone is learning from everyone, which makes this intergenerational household actually very true. That's it normalizes an immigrant family, which is intergenerational, and that's the beauty of being in one.
So true.
And you were also touching before on the idea of grief, which obviously has been so much at the center as well.
Yes.
With the loss of Mohan. And it's really beautiful to watch the way that there's a blossoming romance in this season for her.
Yes.
Which allows her to kind of move forward more than it did when she previously was kind of dipping her toes in. And I was interested in how that really gave you a completely different space and the ability to kind of allow her to move forward a lot more in a way that when she first tried, she just wasn't quite in that place yet. And also
I think
Davey wasn't.
Along with grief comes shame, which is shame to have desires, shame to move on, shame to move forward, shame to take care of oneself versus just focus on her daughter. It's
so much of that also comes from being a South Asian woman.
Totally.
What's been taught to us.
Well, yeah, not putting yourself first. It's so it feels universal, but also very cultural. And so the fact that she gets her daughter's approval, and not only approval, her daughter's help to make this happen, it's letting go of a lot, but letting go of shame, letting go of the grief, but also letting go and being ready for the next chapter. And we're all doing it together. We're all in this together. We all have each other's approval. We're all supportive of each other.
Yeah.
That's a huge theme this season.
It is, and for you, Richa, it's also that idea of it was such a step for her to move out from the family home and to kind of be in her own place for the first time, and now it's the idea of what happens if I move not even just to somewhere down the street, but a completely
away from
different
everyone.
state and start a whole new life.
Yeah.
And so how was that, an even further evolution of her finding a lot of her voice and her independence for you?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is the biggest, in this season she's faced with the biggest test so far is, she has already moved across the world and she's really taken so many risks already and grown so much, but what is it like to move away from everyone and everything and be completely on your own in a different country and that might mean upsetting people. And like we said, one of her biggest, struggles is learning to put herself first. So, I myself, I did the opposite of her. I moved to India several years ago, and that was the first time I had ever lived away from my family, and I didn't have any family when I moved there. I was completely on my own, and that's when the most growth happens. And so even though this is the end of the series, I'm so excited to see what happens when she does move away from everyone and everything and is truly on her own 2 feet and with the person that she's chosen to be with, and what all the excitement that's going to bring.
And also the bonds of family were fractured, especially with the mother and the daughter. It was a fractured bond. And it's hard for someone to let someone go when the bond is fractured, because you're scared you're going to lose them. But because the bond has healed so much, the move away from Kamal and the move away from Devi seems more palatable, easier to make.
Yeah.
And in terms of the comedic voice of the show, it always comes from such a place of truthfulness.
Yes.
And, it even comes in moments of heartbreak and difficulty for all of them as well. And I wanted to ask both of you about how you've really found a lot more adeptness and a lot more space to be able to play around with the comedic sensibility of the show, because it comes from such a place of truthfulness in the writing of it.
I think the only reason it is funny is because it comes from such a place of truth. I think when I'm not a writer, so I don't know, but I think when writers try to create jokes that don't come from any place of groundedness, that's when a show is not funny. And so I think it's because of how grounded the show is, and how, even though it's funny, we're talking about things that are so deeply serious and dark, and so I forgot what your question was, but I think that that's what it is. I think
very personal. The writing is very personal. If you stop filming for 1 second and ask where did this particular scene comes from,
writers have an answer for that. Yeah,
they'll tell you what happened in the writers' room. There's in the last season, I'm picking fights with Devi constantly. It's the day before she's leaving.
Going to college.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just on her the entire time. And the Lang told me it comes from a writer whose mother does exactly this. She's about to get on a plane, 24 hours, like clockwork, she'll start picking up, because it is so hard for her mother to say goodbye to her. That I guess the interaction of this is easier than expressing real emotion. So everything has a beautiful backstory to it. You just have to stop for a second and ask. And the fact that there's a wedding of the grandmother figure, it's because Mindy's dad got remarried,
at
after
a later
he lost,
age. Yeah,
a much later age. Mindy's mom passed, and years later her dad found love again. And so such a breakthrough element of this show is how women, you think their story is written for them, and this show picks up the pen where people usually put a full stop.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, for both of you, what is it that you're going to miss the most about getting to play these characters and getting to live in their worlds?
We'll miss each other, for sure, a lot. I will miss having a character that's so funny and so deep at the same time. I don't think I'll encounter this particular brand of humor, unfortunately, again.
I agree, unless Mindy writes it.
That's true.
Then maybe.
The sequel.
Unless there's a sequel. Yeah, it's true. It's all of these characters that are characters that we know so deeply and personally, being South Asian women, but have never seen on television before and have never been given the opportunity as actors to play before. It's something that we don't know if we'll ever get to. I'm sure we'll get to do it again, and it's because of Never Have I Ever that we'll get to do it again. But it won't be the same, and that's what we're going to miss.
Yeah. Well, you've both brought so much to these characters and to your performance over the course of these last few series, and it's been so wonderful to watch. So thank you so much to both of you. I really
I have to tell you, questions are always so insightful and so deep that I remember your last interview that I took some of your questions and turned them into answers for other people. It's so insightful.
Yeah.
That
it's so wonderful
so
talking to you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.